At first, people thought it was the rapture, and honestly, who wouldn't? Even if you aren't religious, you can agree that the rampant violence and negativity in our world could and should instigate a divine intervention if a God does exist. So when people began to float, seemingly at random, higher and higher into the sky, everyone tried to rationalize it. Religious nuts were the first to go, as they were the ones that were the most likely to disobey the curfews and emergency orders in an effort to see their God. Eventually, groups of people would gather in the street, rejoicing when someone among them was chosen, cheering as the person disappeared into the clouds above. It was a sickening sight as children, the elderly, and even pets were held aloft and pulled into nothingness. Surprisingly, panic only seemed to truly ensue when people who were chosen began bursting into a bloody mess before drifting too high. I gazed out my window, sick to my stomach, as a middle-aged man began to levitate off the ground. His eyes were transfixed on something above him, a smile plastered on his face, his arms outstretched in an effort to welcome his end. And then he burst. 1 second the man was in one piece, the next he was nothing but a puddle of gore on the ground. Bone littered the street like shrapnel. I felt nauseous as I acknowledged the flecks of brain matter that now adorned my window. My wife and I did our best to ensure our son never, under any circumstances, went or looked outside. We kept our blinds closed and told him that there was a really bad but vain storm. So in order for it to go away, everybody had to avoid looking at it and giving it attention. Stupid, I know, but it worked for an on-the-spot excuse. And at 5 years old, you're willing to believe anything if it gets you out of the torturous first grade classes. One morning, I wasn't careful enough. I groggily shambled into the kitchen to grab a morning snack when I heard the giggling. I stood, slack-jawed, as I realized that my son had somehow climbed up on the counter and opened the blinds. "Buddy, what have we said about looking out the window? Come on down, okay?" I walked over, hoping that it wasn't already too late and my innocent son had seen something that his young mind would never recover from. Beaming, he turned around to look at me. "It's okay, Daddy. The storm is just hungry." With confusion, I looked outside. Another group of believers were gathered outside, another person rising. "Buddy, just wait, Daddy." And then, the person was suddenly decapitated. Fleshy bits of their neck were exposed, but their head was nowhere to be seen. Their body ragdolled aimlessly in the sky above as the group below flew into a blind panic, their fight or flight kicking in. Flight typically won out in the events of the unknown. It was in this moment that I began to whisper prayers under my breath, in an effort that something would hear me. I watched as, for a split moment, the air around the headless person shifted, like how heat warps your perception. A figure was beginning to outline, but only just. The person's torso disappeared. 2 legs dangled bloodily and lifelessly in midair, and then I heard something I had somehow never heard before, the sound of gnashing, grinding teeth. I was paralyzed as a behemoth appeared before me, holding what was left of its prey in its gnarled fingers. It stood taller than any of our suburban homes, a straight contrast to the white picket fence American dream backdrop it resided in. It was fleshy, black, and covered in gleaming orbs of light. It was then that I realized they weren't orbs, they were eyes, and they were all transfixed on my window. "It's okay, Daddy, he won't come for us." How can you be so sure?" I inquired, the eerie calmness of my son expressed frightening me more than the monster ever could. "He only comes for those who believe in him." As the beast took a lurching step towards my home, I remembered the prayer that I had whispered out of my blind hope just moments before. And the abomination, in a booming voice that shook our home, bellowed, "I heard you."